Guys, I hope you're doing great. I hope you're enjoying this beautiful holiday season. Such weird energy lately, right? There's like good, there's challenging, all mixed in together. But I want to talk about Jupiter. We're in Jupiter season. We are in Sag season, right? Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. So we're right in the sweet spot in the pocket of Jupiter season. Jupiter happens to be retrograde, went retrograde on November 11th, will be retrograde until March 10th of 2026. So we have this around a 4 month period of dealing with Jupiter retrograde. He's not bad retrograde. A lot of people get very scared when Jupiter goes retrograde. I'm going to discuss this, but what I want to first do is give a general discussion about Jupiter and then bring Jupiter through the houses, right? The signs as well as the houses. So again, so if you have Jupiter in Aries, it's very similar to having Jupiter in the first house, Jupiter in Taurus, very similar to having Jupiter in the second house. Remember the house placement. We have to understand that the sign that's on the house is the energy through which we experience our placement, that placement there. Not looking to confuse you, but you just, when you look at your chart, look at what sign your Jupiter is in. A couple of things. The sign, the house, and you also want to pay attention to the degree. So if you're 27, 28, 29, 0, 1, 2, or 3 degrees, those seven, okay? Again, 27, 28, 29, 0, 1, 2, 3 degrees. You are considered a cusp. So for example, if you have it in Cancer at 28 degrees, whatever the house is, you're also Jupiter in Leo as well. So, and Leo is experienced through fifth house energy. So you just want to make sure that you are covering all the bases there to get the full message. Okay. Like my Jupiter is at 2 degrees, right? In my eighth house. So I understand that I have it in Leo and also in Cancer, right? In my seventh and eighth house cusp. So I have to understand all four of those placements. So I would, if I was watching this, I would watch for Jupiter in the seventh house and the eighth house, as well as Jupiter in Cancer and in Leo, right? And then you sort of blend the messages. After I discuss all of this, I am going to discuss the Jupiter retrograde transit that we're having right now for this 4 months and the different ways that we could just generally be experiencing this as a collective. And then I'm going to discuss if you have Jupiter retrograde in your birth chart, right? It's a little different than if it was just going to be a simple transit. So hopefully this makes sense, but we're going to start by first discussing who the heck is Jupiter anyway? So Jupiter is the planet of expansion, of abundance, of wisdom. Jupiter rules the ninth house. The ninth house is where Sagittarius lives. It's the house of our belief system. It's very connected to a really good way of understanding Jupiter is that Jupiter is kind of like our cosmic cheerleader, right? He's this lucky break generator. He kind of is the cool dude, real smooth, wearing sunglasses, carrying that passport, saying, "Come on, let's go. Where are we going to travel to? Let's hop on the next flight somewhere," right? It's just very much that energy because that's that Sagittarius energy as well. It's of wanderlust. It's expansion. It's belief system. It's actually, Jupiter rules our politics, our religion, our connection to foreign land, foreign cultures, higher education, higher mindedness, law, legalities, governance, local governance, lawyers. It rules lawyers as well. So if you have a very strongly placed Jupiter, a lot of times it will indicate that you're involved in one way or another having to do with the law, hopefully in a good way. But it's expansion, right? Expansion regarding whatever he touches, and sometimes it's a little too much, right? It's like hello overindulgence. That could definitely be a little Jupiterian as well. But he's very fortuitous. He brings luck wherever he lands. He brings this natural optimism, this big picture thinking, and he does really grow our spirituality, and it really does help us to find meaning. So that's why it's important to understand what part of your chart he's hanging out in. He also does help us to reveal our sage energy, our teachery energy, right? How we are naturally wired to actually pass on wisdom, right? So it's important to understand that as well. So And he's fun though, right? When he's in a good place and he's direct and he's just being his little old self, he is very much of a fun vibe energy. And you want to think about it, like if Saturn is that strict teacher saying like, did you finish your work? Did you do what you have to do? Jupiter is kind of like that friend that comes in is just like, ah, the hell with this. Let's go outside. Let's play hooky. You know, Jupiter is that energy. I've often said that Saturn and Jupiter are very interesting together. They don't really love each other. It's that wait, I stand corrected. They actually do. These planets have a very deep connected energy toward each other. But I want you to think about it like the very wise old grandfather, that would be Saturn, and Jupiter being like the young, like late teen, early 20 something rebel wanting to do something, right? So, grandpa's like, do your work, do what you have to do, save for a rainy day, do all of that stuff. And Jupiter's like, worry about it tomorrow, right? So Jupiter can be a lot of very much like a release and a relief for us when he's not activating anything that he might be expanding some sort of challenging energy, right? Because just to keep it real, he can do that as well, and if Venus is this action energy, and if Mars is this action energy, and Venus is love, and Venus is like kind of like Jupiter's little sister, right? We call her the baby benefic, right? She is very fortuitous as well. But if Mars is action and Venus is that love and that consideration for the future, Jupiter comes in and it's just like dream bigger, people, let's go, right? That's how you really want to understand Jupiter, okay? So now let's take Jupiter through each of the houses as well as each of the signs. So Jupiter in the first house and or Aries energy. So if your Jupiter is in the first house, or if it's in another house, but it's in the sign of Aries, then this part of the video is for you. And when Jupiter is here, it is all about fanfare and the drum roll, please, right? I mean, Aries is fire. Aries is the emperor energy. So Jupiter comes into this placement and just like pops on the scene. Right? This placement of Jupiter, if this is your space, indicates where you're open to higher inspiration. And with Jupiter in this area of self, because remember, Aries rules that first house of self, it's very connected to being a natural philosopher as well. So you are a natural philosopher who attempts to answer some big questions of existence. And whatever you do have the ability to inspire and kind of like arouse people, get them excited, right? But you can arouse just new life and interest and throwing yourself into something with great initial enthusiasm. Sometimes you are very important in your life when it comes to the social scene or as an educational or religious thinker. And while other people with this placement could play the sportier side of Jupiter out, living the life of an adventurer or a gambler, or even a lot of my clients who have this placement are athletes, right? You may be one of the trendies, right? Who are up on like the latest styles. You're always seen in all the right places. You tend to hang with the right people, right? This could certainly be a tendency at a certain point in your life. Now, on the other hand, you may actually be a nature lover who loves nature, loves to climb mountains. Um, and you do this with the intention of being able to experience like the expansive vistas that brings, right? When we climb to mountaintops, or typically you maybe like to fly. Even if you have a fear of flying, there's this idea that you like to travel around to different places, right? Where you sort of look at the world as your playground, right? You enjoy kind of roving from here to there, coming across different people, different encounters, sharing what you have with them with other people, You love to kind of collect these experiences and then move on, right? And if we understand a planet in location to indicate the best way to meet life in that area, especially when it comes to this first house, then those of you with Jupiter here should seek to expand yourself in ways associated with this sign, Aries, and or first house placement. So with Jupiter at the very start, right? Of the zodiac, again, regardless whether it's in the sign of Aries for you or in that first house, you may want to go further and faster, and you can envision very far-reaching goals. But aspects to Jupiter, depending on what's in your particular birth chart, might indicate other parts of your personality, what might end up holding you back or might end up hindering your personality or your progress in this way. So it's probably still best for you to view life as a journey, even if you have to move along as a pace that is much, much slower than what you would initially or ideally like, right? So you're going to get there. You might have these big visions and have this taste like I want to be there yesterday, right? But because of certain perhaps squares or oppositions in another part of your chart, you may realize that things are going a little more slowly than you would really like. In some cases, I do want to say there can be an inflated sense of self, inflated sense of identity. This is one of the dangers of this placement, innately believing that you have so much to offer, which is valuable, which is expansive and worthwhile. And there are those with Jupiter in this placement who hold nothing back, right? And you're going to know if you are that person where you hold nothing back. You just feel perfectly comfortable to just say whatever it is, right? Now, sometimes you can have an incredible vision and inspiration, but insufficient discipline and concentration to follow through to the point of completion. And because you so deeply want to free yourself from any kind of restriction, you may look for the easy way out if the going gets tough. So just something to keep in mind. Now, sometimes this placement can also indicate, again, travel, like I mentioned before, or many changes of residence while still young. And since Jupiter's tendency is to inflate and expand, weight can sometimes be something that you struggle with. Because remember that Aries or first house energy is the physical self. Okay. So just something to keep in mind. I hope that was helpful. Thanks so much for hanging with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye. If you have Jupiter in the second house and or Taurus, this part of the video is for you. Now, Jupiter in the second and or Taurus, you may seek to expand your resources and possessions as a means of gaining greater joy and fullness in life in general. You may see money as well as possessions as a symbol of your worth and value, even your ability to just have a strong foundation. This idea of wanting to collect stuff, right? Now, certain objects may be treasured because they inspire you in some way or another. Maybe they communicate or symbolize something very significant for you. But this idea of making you feel growth, expansiveness, right? So, and it could just be a physical object that you connect with that just makes you um, feel more empowered. Okay, more empowered. So for some of you, this could be a large house, because remember, it's Jupiter. It could be that kind of car, right? It could be having certain type of furniture, a large living room, anything like that, right? Your value system in general. Okay, this Taurus second house thing may be linked to your philosophical and or religious beliefs, which is very, again, very connected to Jupiter. Jupiter does rule Sagittarius, that ninth house energy, which is the house that God speaks to us in, right? So there is this very spiritual energy wherever Jupiter is. Now, the whole idea of acquiring stuff, right, is very, very heightened for anyone with this placement with such strong motivation. You usually succeed in the material realm. However, what is earned may be spent as quickly as you make it. So it's one way. You could go through periods of that. While you are usually generous, just generally in your life, difficult aspects to Jupiter suggest a wastefulness with money and possessions or a tendency to invest recklessly and unwisely. So it has to do with like what would be three houses away from you, five houses away from you, opposite you, or you want to just see what kind of energies might be in that house placement. Again, we say these things in general, but I don't know you or your birth chart. So you just want to be able to pay attention to those things in your own chart. But the good thing is, should you fall flat on your face, right, when it comes to finances or any kind of investment, you generally do have the ability to drum up money again, just as when you are, super down and out and not feeling very great about yourself, something comes along and ideally and ultimately saves you in that space, right? Where you're able to feel better, you're able to have more once again, right? Now, this placement does represent what constitutes security for you. So, with Jupiter here, personal safety could certainly be sought through, like I was mentioning before, any kind of abundance in the material realm. Or security might mean possessing higher knowledge or some sort of sound religious beliefs. Or you could be deeply entrenched in your politics, your belief system. Now, paradoxically, from that, you may feel more secure if you know that at any moment you are free to get up and go. Will you feel very comfortable always having at least one foot out the door? Right? Now, innate resources include a natural enthusiasm and ability to inspire other people. You're just very good at that. And the capacity to impart super practical meaning to life, right? This is again another little bit of a superpower there. The desire nature that you have within you is strong, and you likely believe that there are higher justifications for having what you so urgently want. And this is just where I say you have to be very realistic with yourself, right? Because you can completely convince yourself why you need all that money, why you need that larger house, why you need that thing, or why it is that you can't compromise your beliefs. Um, right? Because remember now, the second house Taurus opposes eighth house Scorpio energy, which is blending with other people. So this is in a natural opposition. So, note within yourself that if Jupiter is in your second house into a Taurus, you could be pretty dug into your need and views on finances, shared resources, your belief system. And you might have a really hard time meeting other people in the middle when it comes to those things, right? It's just something to keep in mind, right? You don't feel too guilty satisfying your own endless appetites here. I mean, this is the thing. So you just want to be mindful of this. Money could be earned through Jupiterian types of pursuits, whether it's teaching, right? Because Jupiter rules higher education, higher mindedness, philosophies, anything like that, any teaching, travel, the law, importing and exporting, trade, religion, organized or otherwise, any kind of spirituality, publishing, marketing, advertising, getting something out there to the world. Those are all Jupiterian things. Um, well, also because the second house is also money you make from the work that you do, you can have, whether you realize it or not, a natural affinity toward writing as well, right? This could be very, very good for you as well, as a writer. Okay, my friend. So I hope that was helpful. Thanks for hanging with me. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. This part of the video is for Jupiter in the third house and or in Gemini. Jupiter has so much to say in this placement. Now, at best, the energy and the inspiration which gives rise to thoughts or words can be communicated and channeled to others who are then fired and enlivened and expanded by what you have said or by what you've made accessible to them, right? You are a great rah-rah cheerleader. You're a good motivator. Awesome. Now, there's another side of that, right? Because we want to say at worst, you might talk endlessly and be more concerned with what the quantity of what you have to say. more concerned with that than the quality. So just be mindful of that if that's you. Pausing every now and then to savor the rare genius of your insights might be really appreciated by those around you. Now, Jupiter in this placement also does expand the mind. And while this may yield an overabundance of thoughts on any one topic or mind, any sort of mind processing of the mind, anything like that, there can be a tendency to kind of be all over the place. You just have to be careful of that. It does give an awareness that's very broad to being able to identify and sense everything that's going on around you within a larger framework, within a larger perspective, for sure. Now, while focusing on something specific, you do not lose sight of what's going on in the background and all around it, which to me is kind of a superpower, right? Now, you may, though, at the same time, you may end up hurrying through things, hurrying through a book, thinking that the sooner you're done with it, the more quickly you can read the next. While at other times, you may just find that just one sentence is enough to kind of put you on this journey into another world, into the space of imagination. Because remember, this is the house of the mind. And when Jupiter is there, you love to really indulge in your imagination, right? But you want to make sure that you don't get lost there. You want to be careful that you're not, you might start the books but never finish them. You might start that creative thing but never finish it. So you want to just be careful there, right? For some of you, right? Similarly, on the other end, it depends on your particular chart exactly. There can be a tendency to read too much into another person's passing comment or how they looked at you. And you can end up making mountains out of molehills, making a big thing right again out of nothing because you're misinterpreting. This could certainly happen. I do see this a lot with a lot of people I know with this particular placement. Now, one of Jupiter's main concerns is finding greater fulfillment, right? That's just in general. So in this placement, knowledge can be worshipped as almost like a god who offers you this increased joy and this mastery over life, inclining you to exhibit an almost insatiable need to understand and learn things. Sometimes those of you with this position can be referred to as that of like the perpetual student, right? Hanging on too long to that space. For you, life is a big puzzle, right? It's a big puzzle, and the more pieces you can find to fit together, the better, right? And each time two parts do click into place, it's like you have this mental epiphany. It's this, it's just this fabulous feeling, right? When you can connect things, when you can make these connections. Now, you may think that you have to travel the world a bunch of times over to achieve the ultimate release. And I'm saying release because this is almost like a built up kind of energy. But you will likely eventually realize that there is more than enough happening just between like your front door and your back door, or just within your local neighborhood, that will help to expand you in the way that you are craving within your life, right? Um, but you're somebody who like you enjoy things that are going to expand that mind. So museums, um, third houses represent more like staycations and local travel, but that you can absorb so much beautiful energy from those things. And since those of you with Jupiter here are expanded by whatever is around you, you will normally, this does normally indicate a good relationship with brothers and sisters and neighbors and extended family, etc. All those things that the third house represents. Sometimes there are a lot of siblings in your family. However, if there are difficult aspects to Jupiter, Jupiter can manifest in fierce sibling rivalry or the hero worship of an older sibling, brother or sister, only to later be very disappointed if too much has been expected of you from this person. Those of you who have traveled or changed residence, you may reflect on that, especially from maybe your earlier childhood, where there was a lot of moving around. If it was traveling, it was moving around. childhood through adolescence. Usually, early schooling is not found too threatening here if you have this placement, but welcomed as an opportunity to actually broaden your mind, broaden your horizons beyond what your actual family had to offer up to that point. So, writing, teaching, lecturing, study, travel, and knowledge of languages are all really good things for you to embrace and things that you have a natural affinity for. Again, if there's nothing debilitating this placement. Okay, guys? So I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging with me. So if Jupiter is in Cancer for you or Jupiter is in the fourth house, this part of the video is for you. Now, at first, the very hidden and insular fourth house seems kind of an ill-suited domain for Jupiter, who's just like the sky god and this expansive energy. But true to his nature, he does manage to make a very comfortable life for himself in this sphere, provided that his home does not fence him in too much, right? So you guys are very, very sensitive about not feeling too closed in. Now, I've seen a lot of charts with Jupiter in this placement of people who were born into what I would call like a fancy family, right? So it could be either like aristocratic, maybe there was some sort of legal connection or a foreign connection where they came from a foreign land, a foreign culture, especially father energy in your life, maybe came from another country or there were just heavy ties to another country of some sort like that, even just through blood. But here, there is this inherent kind of like philosophical or religious or traveling nature that is manifested through early home conditioning, right? It really is kind of like a genie in the bottle here, right? Residing deep within the walls of Jupiter within this placement is very powerful, is very expansive, but it really wants to get out, right? Really wants to be freed. So, a lot of people with this placement do what they have to do. They live and live and live. And then when they get old enough to sort of get out there and live, they just want to experience and just, again, like um, collect these kind of like experiences and memories, right? So really nice energy there. Now you can invest a great deal of energy in establishing the home of your dreams, but you better make sure that there's enough room to keep you happy to satisfy that need for you to move around, like literally, where you have enough space. You're very sensitive to that. So if you're in a space, and what's interesting is you could be kind of comfortable in, for example, a small room if there are big windows. There's got to be some sort of like outlet. It's very important. That's that 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 part is satisfied, okay? Big home, but again, if not a big home, then there are like a lot of windows or something that encourages that expansiveness. I mean, it's not like you would like just like that, like you need that. It's very different, you know. Um, Often you do benefit from living out of the crowded conditions again of the city and in a more like natural and open setting, like country kind of situation, where the vistas are unobstructed, where you have, and again, this is very subjective, but it's just, and you're very sensitive to like to nature in that way, right? And this is like, I always picture somebody with this placement, like living on a ranch or just having a really large yard, right? Some of you with this placement may travel from country to country looking for your spiritual home. Rather than aiming for public or professional recognition, you might devote yourself to work on your soul work, on inner growth, inner expansiveness. Lots of focus. And there could be a very deep connection, by the way, with Jupiter in the fourth house with mother energy as well. Now, Jupiter in this placement may color, though, a paternal relationship, which I think is very interesting. So you may, on some level, confuse your father with the image of a god. And I can hear you guys from here already. It's like, no way, no. But this is on a very kind of like subconscious level, particularly like as a child, like possibly seeing him as somebody who's larger than life, maybe even like noble or majestic in your own like subjective understanding of whatever that is. And reflecting on some of the other qualities of, this is a very Zeus-like energy. The father might be experienced as a promising figure full of potential and inspiration, really capable, where you view this individual as being very capable, but with an incorrigible, either like roving eye, or just a bag full of wild oats where they just can't settle down. Like all this potential, but they can't focus on just one thing, right? And a lot of times, people with displacement, their father ended up suppressing the Jupiterian side of his nature for the sake of providing perhaps the kind of structure or security expected of him. And if that's the case, then you, as the person with this placement, may end up growing up with this irresistible urge to enact what your father wasn't able to play out, like wanting to be more and better than your father was able to actually be. And I kind of, we could sort of even spread this into like general parental, but especially father energy, right? Where there was an identification of the potential, but you recognize it in your ways, him never really reaching that potential, and then in your life, you wanted to sort of enact that in your life, if that makes sense. Now, generally speaking, this placement does favor promising old age. Yes, filled with a lot of interesting things, really interesting and fun pursuits. I really like this energy when it comes to lifespan. Of course, it's depending if it's not, inhibited in any way, of course. But with this placement, there is usually an attempt to build a life on a clear moral and or philosophical framework. Sometimes there's, again, travel in childhood, as I said, or growing up in a religious family, or religion and philosophy being a very central point for you. It's a comfortable central point for you. And if life, for one reason or another, comes to a standstill, you can renew yourself by strong acts of faith or envisioning some new goal towards which to aim. For you, more is definitely worth a lot more than just enough, if that makes sense. But a very blessed little placement, I would have to say this is for sure. I hope this was helpful, guys. Thanks for hanging with me. See you next time. Bye-bye. Hey guys, so if Jupiter is in your fifth house and or Leo, this part of the video is for you. Now, this placement always enjoys expressing itself, but with Jupiter here, it has to be done with thunderbolt and lightning because it is the fabulous fifth house of joy and fun and falling in love and love affairs, romance, children, vacations, just this. It's also very connected to your childhood as well. But any form of creative self-expression. Those of you with Jupiter here, step into something profound. Perhaps replicating your own creativity brings you this sense of like divine creation itself. So if you're saying to yourself, wow, that's cool because I am creative, I am an artist, I am a singer, I am someone who is a great orator. I have great writing skills. You have a natural affinity to being someone who stands in front of the room and people actually listen to you. I mean, this is great, just by creating, just the idea of creating. And again, it doesn't have to be an art. It could be, this is the house of the entrepreneur as well. So maybe you're not artistic really at all, but you're very good at having your own business or doing something like that. It's like that's where you can feel very connected to the divine within yourself, right? And this is the sign of play. And nobody plays quite like Jupiter, right? And it's hardly like your sandbox is large enough. Like the entire beach is a little more ample for you guys, right? But your castles have to be bigger and more imaginative than the next person. Jupiter here is willing to cooperate on joint ventures with, whether it's playmates or in a relationship or even coworkers, provided that you are the one to direct everything, that you're in charge. Because after all, your vision is really the most interesting. And if you like it, then it's got to be best for everyone, right? So even if a friend slips you an idea or two, right? Jupiter will expand and elaborate on it until it is totally your own. So you might take a nugget of information and just blow it up into something different, right? You can be somebody who, they say, you can, what's the point? I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's like, no, you are really good actually at reinventing the wheel. This is something that, if anyone's going to do it, you're going to do it. You should have no trouble filling your life with hobbies and artistic outlets, which you think are fun and which just satisfy you, provided that you stay with things long enough to actually develop a decent degree of expertise, right? Because you like to test yourself against life in general, guys. You could sometimes have a taste for adventurous sports and games of chance, or maybe even the stock market. This placement typically loves to take risks and gamble. You probably love Vegas, right? Even if it's just playing the slots and looking at people, like just the excitement, it's just fun, right? Every single new hurdle needs to be just a smidge bigger than the last, right? And with Jupiter here, a love of the chase is really, really evident. Now, you are a natural romantic, absolutely. This placement seeks an outlet in relationships and affairs. So, a word of caution here, perspectives regarding all Leo matters, right? Because Leo is the landlord of that fifth house. Romance, your children, your creative projects can fall into time periods of impairment because of and by your own subjectivity, your own excitement, your own enthusiasm. Right? You just want to make sure that you're giving things some space to breathe and that you are considering other people's point of view, your children's point of view, a partner's point of view, a business partner's point of view. Okay. Now, usually this placement does indicate a great rapport with children. You grow up with this philosophical or spiritual outlook. Um, and therefore they do as well, right? So if you have your Jupiter in this placement, your kids will usually grow up with a strong religious or philosophical outlook as well, with a very strong desire to broaden their own horizons, their own sense of adventure. Now, as a parent, if this is your placement, you may project your own unlived out yearnings and wanderlust onto your children. And in certain cases, you may push your children to be a greater achiever than you, you know. In other cases, I've seen this, there could be an attempt to, you know, in your own right, um, over push your children, which we have to be a little careful of, because just as easily as you can really encourage your children to be better and, more accomplished than you, depending on your child, it's going to go one way or the other. There's no in between. Either they are going to be more of an achiever, or they can actually go in the other direction, and they could actually, betray your ideals in one way or another. But nonetheless, the apparent, child relationship usually does survive intact, which is the good news. There's no like never speaking to you again. That is super rare. If this is where your Jupiter is, and if this is your experience, you have to know what else is going on 3 houses away, 5 houses away, and across your chart, or what other placements are in that house, because that would be a debilitated Jupiter. Because usually, great energy with kids. And even when you have some snafus with your kids, you're able to get past it pretty easily. Okay, my friends? So that is what I have for you. I hope this was helpful in some way. See you next time. Bye-bye. If Jupiter is in Virgo for you, or it's in the sixth house, this part of the video is for you. Now, Jupiter may seem a little cramped in this placement of health, adjustment to necessity, and the management of day-to-day affairs, right? Running errands, taking care of what you have to do each day. But regardless of what he does with his time here, he always manages to make something significant here, right? And so this is also your day-to-day work environment as well. So you seek or should seek to experience the meaning of life through work or service to others. Pride will typically be taken in your work. You usually have a lot of energy to contribute to any kind of work situation that might be going on. Now, although Jupiter is prone to believe that his way of doing things is best, you will normally have a good relationship with your coworkers with Jupiter here. And this position could indicate work of a Jupiterian nature. So it could involve travel, public relations, educational activities of any kind, the promotion of art, culture, sports, religion, even politics, anything like that, all those ninth house things that we talk about. Now, you may burden yourself with too many duties in life and not leave enough time to care for your own body. Or you may become almost obsessed with health or making your body a better vessel for your spirit. It could go one way or the other. You might undertake any new diet, any kind of like new health technique or exercise regimen, which promises heaven on earth, right? So you want to be careful here because extremes can be indicated since Jupiter is all about expanding that sign and house, right, that we're in. So you could certainly become completely obsessed, right, with all six house things, right? So taking care of your health, mental, physical, emotional. You could even be that way with your day-to-day environment. You could even be that way with your responsibilities, right? It's just something to be mindful of, right? Because we always want to have like a little bit of balance in that space wherever Jupiter is. So that is what I have for you guys. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye. If Jupiter is in the seventh house and or Libra, this is for you. You have a very strong concern for justice, my friends. You are a diplomatic teacher. You express your spiritual values in your relationships and examining just Zeus, right? The mythological energy of Zeus, his own married life certainly does help. And I like using this example to explain how Jupiter works here. He had a number of marriages before settling down, in a matter of speaking, with Hera, the wife officially associated with his reign, with his sovereignty. Now, one account relates the story of their relationship in this way. It was the middle of the winter, and Zeus appeared before Hera in the form of a bird, and the bird was frozen by the cold. So Hera held it to her chest to warm it, right, to kind of thaw it out a little bit. At that moment, Zeus, eager as always to take advantage of an opportunity, changed back into his original form. Now, resisting at first, Hera finally consented to give away if he promised, only if he promised to marry her. Having Jupiter here, you may resort to all sorts of tricks or disguises to capture the partner of your choice, right? It's a thrill of the chase at the end of the day. Now, their marriage was not an easy one because Zeus was a little like philandering bugger, and Hera's passionate jealousy was an issue. And this dynamic often does replay itself in the relationship of those with Jupiter in Libra and or the seventh house, where one partner gets to be the faithful and obedient one while the other justifies running around willy-nilly, okay? Sometimes the roles will reverse overnight. In the few cases in which Hera decided to enjoy herself, Zeus was instantly back home complaining that his wife was gone, right? It's okay when he does it, but then when she does it, he's home like complaining. Similarly, you likely suffer from the classic freedom closeness dilemma. You want your independence to explore different facets of life, and yet you want security as well. Ideally, you do best with partners who share and understand your urge to have other interests and like doing other things outside of your relationship. But this can manifest in other ways as well. You may project Jupiter onto the partner and look for somebody to play God to you. In this sense, you are prey to anyone who promises you the world and liable to be disappointed when you only get a bunch of lip service with little to no follow through. Also, with this energy, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Sagittarius represents father energy, and the seventh house in Libra is connected to marriage energy, You also just have to be mindful where on a subconscious level, you may be trying to replace father energy in one way or another through relationship, right? Because the partner can reflect Jupiter in other respects as well. Maybe they can be foreign or very prestigious kind of person, influential, maybe very religious or philosophical, or maybe they're a spendthrift or a lovable but shady individual who perpetually says one thing but does another. All of those are very Jupiterian, connected to that Sag energy, right? Now, most positively, the partner can bring warmth, generosity, good faith, and material wealth, lots of optimism, and an expansion of awareness into the life of those with this placement. Now, conversely, this placement can offer these same qualities in return, and more often than not, the relationship is beneficial to both people involved in the relationship. Even if the relationship doesn't work out, there is this abiding hope of this better one just around the corner. If you never marry or you choose to divorce, it's usually because you're reluctant to be tied down, and that reluctancy ends up creating a situation where you end up losing alternatives, right? So, I mean, if you resonate with this, it's pretty specific there. Again, unless it is debilitated because of an opposition, a square, or a quincunx, or you have something else going in there, going on in that particular house, within 10 degrees of Jupiter. This is likely how this energy manifests for you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. If Jupiter is in your eighth house and or Scorpio, partnerships may be sought as a way of being able to transcend your individual boundaries and self-limitations, right? Where you want to grow beyond who and what you are through relationship. Because for Jupiter here, sexual intimacy can be understood symbolically here as just two people merging to become something greater than what each of you are individually, right? You get it because Jupiter is just about expansion. And this is the house of like, it's many things, but one of the things it is blending, right? However, any sort of hard aspect to Jupiter can show excessive sexual appetites and a constant need for new experiences in this area. I've also seen difficult aspects to Jupiter here reveal a person who has trouble reconciling his or her philosophical or religious beliefs with their sexual drive, right? Because of that religious implication there, okay? Now, Jupiter here may also have such high expectations of what sex should be that you're disappointed if the bells and whistles don't go off and mountains don't move every time that you have some sort of intimate connection. You look for the meaning, right? You're always looking for meaning. You're looking for the meaning in what's hidden, what's taboo or mysterious. And your religious and your philosophical beliefs may be tinged with the metaphysical or with the occult. Guys, remember, this is that house that astrology lives in. I have my Jupiter here. And I've been an astrologer. I started tarot when I was 9 years old. I got my first astrology book when I was 14. I officially enrolled to study in my early 20s. I am now 58. I've been doing this for decades professionally. So that's an example. Okay. I do evolutionary astrology, which is the psychological approach to astrology. And again, this eighth house is very connected to the field of psychology as well. So you may find that, you not only really resonate with the occult, with astrology, but you don't find it very difficult to figure things out and make those connections either, right? Because of that Jupiter energy in there. But always looking for these meanings. And you will push doors open to others that prefer the door to be shut when it comes to answers to things in life, especially when behind that door, something might be a little uncomfortable behind it, right? So you just want to make sure that you handle these things with empathy if that's you. Now, periods of breakdown and transition are usually weathered in pretty good spirit, often bringing out this sort of innate optimism. A crisis can be seen in the broader context of life as a whole and understood as a potential turning point or opportunity for change as well as growth. So that is what I have for you guys. I hope this was helpful in some way. Thanks for hanging with me. I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Hey guys, so if Jupiter is in the ninth house or Sagittarius, woohoo! I mean, this is very exalted because that is where Jupiter lives. Jupiter rules Sagittarius. Jupiter lives in the ninth house. Now, I do want to just say this is a huge expansive energy, and according to the myth, right? Because I like to use Zeus and Hera a lot when it comes to explaining Jupiter. Hera's a later wife, and then we have his first wife, the goddess of wisdom. When she was pregnant with Athene, with Zeus, Athena, was warned that he would be dethroned by any child that was had, okay? So that she ended up having, he would probably dethrone him, throw him off, take his power down. So in order to save himself, he swallowed the mother and the unborn child in one gulp. Now, as the saying goes, we are what we eat. And in this way, Zeus came to embody supreme wisdom within himself, right? And that was his whole point in doing that, right? Because they can't, not only could they not take his power away and take him down, but if he ate them, he would be that threat, right? Now, later on, after a splitting headache, and a lot of you guys probably know this myth, he safely gave birth to Athena on his own, and she became not only one of his favorite children, but also a goddess of wisdom in her own right. Now, the story offers some insight into how Jupiter best functions here, right? It's his own house, it's the natural domain of Sag, and this first goddess of wisdom is a threat and cannot be allowed to give birth to anything. So only when she's taken back into the self, right? That is, right? Digested and well thought out. Jupiter in the ninth gives birth to a greater wisdom, which is, safe, love, belief, wisdom. It all has to feel safe to exist. The information has to feel safe to possess. So with Jupiter here, a little knowledge not properly integrated with the rest of your personality can be a dangerous thing, guys. It's a long way of getting to that. In extreme cases, I've seen people with this placement think that they know all that there is to know and will justify what they wish to do based on, if God didn't want me to do it, then he wouldn't have put the thought in my head. He wouldn't have given me this opportunity. It's all very kismet, all of that. And with Jupiter in its natural house, you can easily get carried away by what you think, right? And fanatically worship your own philosophy and beliefs as some kind of law unto itself. So it's a beautiful, expansive energy. This is his home. But there has to be this understanding that because it's your politics, your religion, your belief, it's so expanded that it may be difficult for you to recognize other people, right, in that realm. Right. And because Zeus swallowed wisdom, he came to embody it. And those with Jupiter in the ninth and or Sagittarius often exhibit the kind of knowledge which can attribute meaning and significance to even the most unbearable agonies that you have to go through. You will travel far and wide, literally and or metaphorically, in search of basic truths upon which to guide your own pilgrimage through life, your own understandings, provided that you don't lock yourself up in an ivory tower, right, of these mental abstractions, right, which is what I'm saying. You want to make sure that you're leaving yourself some breathing room, because there's a lot of potential here to inspire others with your vision and your insight. But just be mindful of not getting in your own way or being too dug in to your own personal philosophy, because maybe there are other or perhaps many better perspectives for you to consider. So you want to just be mindful of that, right? That you want to make yourself look at other people's perspectives. As those of you with Jupiter here, you can journey to the farthest reaches of the mind and even into outer space, but what you discover is of little use to anyone unless you come back down to earth and you've learned all of your lessons and you learned how to incorporate them into life in a very, very practical way, right? Very practical way. Now, along with philosophy and religion, travel, higher education, these things will be seen as ways of expanding awareness and finding meaning in your life. If other aspects in your chart help to ground your Jupiter, you can make an excellent teacher, a great writer, very successful in the area of writing, a lawyer, manager, a coach, any sort of public relations person could be great. If well aspected, a beneficial rapport with in-laws. Brother-in-law, mother-in-law, father-in-law, sister-in-law, all in-laws can certainly be had here. So I hope this was helpful. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. If Jupiter is in your 10th house and or Capricorn, this part of the video is for you. Your profession and public life are your vehicles to find and express the meaning of life. You may have an ever-expanding need for public recognition. You might be seen for all your power, your brilliance, your leadership ability. As you remember, this 10th house is career, public reputation, standing in the world. Uh, it's the house, it's the highest house in your chart, and it's the house of the public. It's the most crowded house, right? Because it's other people there as well. And when you step out of the house and into the public eye, you don't intend to go unnoticed, not with Jupiter here. So it's likely that it's through, for most of you, career status recognition that you seek meaning and fulfillment in life. Some of you may be married to somebody who has a very high social standing as well. Now, in many cases with this placement, fame itself is worshipped as something divine. Often, with those with this placement, can rise to a good position in a very reputable profession, such as law or education, banking, politics, any sort of corporate management. Careers may also involve travel or some sort of international connection for a lot of you. Others of you may be actors or exponents of religion or philosophy. The choice is wide, it's varied, but no matter what occupation it is, this placement brings a high degree of energy as well as enthusiasm to everything, right? Because it's Jupiter. It's enthusiasm, it brings vision, insight, and the capacity to organize others. 10th house, organization. So you can certainly be very, very gifted with that. You can work well with people, but probably do your best if you have a fair amount of authority or a lot of room to kind of move, as long as nobody's breathing down your neck too heavy, that's when you're the happiest. And usually you do come by jobs that do not have too many obstacles standing in the way of you being able to be successful. Now, because the 10th house is the manifestation of mother energy, the image of mother will be reflected by Jupiter in this house, where she has been experienced as perhaps dramatic or theatrical or adept at manipulating others through emotional drama. Sometimes she has a far-reaching interest for many of you in religion, for others, philosophy or politics, which makes her seem as if she's not really of this world, right? She could be foreign or from an influential or well-known family background. The child, you being her child, may experience and worship her as something a bit larger than life. I've seen a lot of people with this feel a kind of competitiveness or a rivalry with their mother as well, and not like they invited it, right? It's almost like you were pushed into this place because she might be like that. But now on the positive side, your mother could be a source of inspiration and guidance with helpful advice about meeting life and yet not being too overprotective. With this kind of mother, you could feel very confident about encountering the world and those in authority in general. So in that way, mother could be a very positive influence, right? So it does depend on your personal chart. I hope that was helpful, guys. Thanks for hanging with me. See you next time. If Jupiter is in your 11th house and or Aquarius, this part of the video is for you. Now, you may be sought by friends and groups to provide some sort of inspiration and support. Now, conversely, your own horizons and understandings when it comes to the meaning of life are broadened and expanded through social interaction. So you may assume the role of perhaps like a guru or a hero or a heroine in the eyes of your friends or just your general network, your group of people. Or you find yourself looking for a friend or a group to be their protection or perhaps even their salvation. Now, Jupiter in this placement will normally join clubs or organizations which promote humanitarian and egalitarian causes or which promises growth and expansion for everyone involved. You're likely in tune with new current and progressive social trends. Now, any sort of difficult aspect to Jupiter here may indicate high expectations and ideals and disappointment when the group fails to solve all of your problems or doesn't succeed soon enough in eliminating the challenges of the world, right? That you're working really hard on trying to help manifest. Undismayed, though, however, right? Because Jupiter is very optimistic, you will move on to the next cause or the next organization in the hopes that some sort of newfound formula will manifest and be the key to that, to solve that problem that you have to move forward. Now, Jupiter here also does suggest an ever expanding circle of friends, often of varied cultures and nationalities into different things. Now, for some of you, life significance only comes to fruition if your schedules are fully booked and you're having to choose between that over-the-top function, that event that you've been invited to, or the invitation to go away. You want these invitations, right? Sometimes an over-involvement in social activities or too great an entanglement in the lives of your friends may end up dissipating your energy and detract from applying yourself in other areas of your life. So you have to be careful because those kinds of things can certainly be, overscheduling yourself, getting too involved in your friend's business can end up being a drain to you. Now, Jupiter here is concerned with becoming more than what you already are. Therefore, you are usually not short of goals, not short of objectives in life, and you could almost always be seen looking ahead into the future, right? Because that 11th house represents the future. As soon as one objective is attained, another one appears in its place. A narrowing down of goals or more discrimination in choosing which ones are worth following may at some point ultimately be necessary if you are spreading yourself way too thin, right? And you'll be able to vibe that if that's you. If you shoot your arrows too high, they may come back down very hard on you. So if you aim in too many directions at once, the arrows won't know where they're supposed to go, right? It could be dizzying just watching your process. However, because there is usually such a strong faith that you will and should achieve what it is that you want, life can't help but support you accordingly, right? This happens with Jupiter, right? So often friends or groups of people, share the same faith as you, share that same ideology, right? In you and in your goals. And it's like, come on, you could do it. And they could be very, very helpful and supportive in your process, ultimately in your process. So that is what I have for you guys. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. For those of you with Jupiter in Pisces and or Jupiter in the 12th house, you are on an intuitive search for the truth. You are a champion for the underdog. And when living in your highest self, you could be very effective spiritual leader, very effective religious leader. You could be a fantastic tarot reader, great at Reiki, yoga, meditation, anything like light work, anything spiritual, great, right? Just got a natural fit. But just when things seem, and they can, even with Jupiter here, hopeless and bleak, Jupiter kind of comes out of nowhere for you guys and salvages the situation. And this can make you feel as though you have a guardian angel who appears in the nick of time with a brand new shiny get out of jail free card. Like just in like that 11th hour, something comes in to save you, right? And what really sustains and rescues you is a deep faith in the benevolence and the significance of life, and the openness and willingness to receive whatever it has to bring to you. In any sign or house it's placed in, Jupiter is looking for the meaning in life. But in this placement, that meaning is not found in any outer event or any external reality, but rather it exists within yourself through the meaning and significance you choose to attribute to an event. You have the ability to turn negative experiences into positive ones and obstacles into blessings with this particular placement. It's great. As Jupiter's energy is where we are looking for the truth, but in this placement, the energy of the oldest water house of the subconscious and the hidden, the truth can be challenging to see clearly. Can be. So you have to really put on a lot of gear and be willing to do that deep dive into the subconscious. You could be on an almost desperate hunt for the joy in all directions, and you will look everywhere else but inside yourself for that fulfillment. This is where we have to be careful. Reckless behavior and overindulgence in alcohol and drugs and manic theatrics or hypocrisy or general imprudence and other such challenging traits may be the self-undoing of Jupiter in this placement. Because remember, the 12th house is the house of self-sabotage as well, and it's the house of the victim. So we have to be mindful of that as well. And in this placement, Jupiter can be the channel through which inspiration and healing flow. And therefore, you have much to offer working within hospitals, prisons, charitable institutions, drug rehabs, or really, guys, anything that puts you behind the scenes in a very supportive role. Remember, the 12th house is also the sign of the house of the nurse, rather, right? It's where Pisces lives. Now, the expanded vision that dawns on you in times of trouble not only provides hope and inspiration for yourself, but it will guide others through difficulties as well. And that's why you're so good at anything in that area. I've seen this placement in the charts of a number of gifted counselors, psychics, healers, again, rehab professionals. It's also very creative as well, you know? Very creative as well. I'm just thinking about one client I have. She is a music therapist, and that's her Jupiter is in the 12th house as well. She works in drug rehab, so it's very, very interesting. But any sort of flowing aspects to Jupiter in this placement also bode well for you. If ever you need to be, for any reason, if you ever need to be institutionalized, if you ever need to be hospitalized, put in a rehab at any point, there is this ability to benefit from the care and protection you receive. And then you could turn that experience into a positive one, or you will probably not have to stay confined for any longer than necessary. It's interesting because those of you who have been watching me for a while know that my brother Steve died last June in his sleep. I had two siblings died within 5 days of each other in their sleep. But my brother Steve, he had Jupiter in the 12th, and he was a very bad alcoholic and addict for many years. It took a bunch of times in rehab for him to finally get clean. But when he did, he knew he had to keep himself on a short leash. So he really wanted to like stay within that arena. So he ended up working in a rehab, and then he put himself through school, and he became a therapist and worked at a rehab, right? But he was so good at what he did. I mean, you can't tell you how packed the service was after he passed away. Was because of what he experienced in his life, right? He became such an incredible teacher and mentor in that area because of his own experience. So I'm not suggesting that that's going to be everybody's story, but you get the idea, right? Where you can align that with your own life in a relative way. But I hope this was helpful for you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Okay, so now let's talk about Jupiter retrograde as a transit, right? This is kind of like a time for inner expansion, and it's about 4 months long this time. Jupiter went retrograde November 11th and will be retrograde until March 10th of 2026. So within that window of time, that cosmic cheerleader that we have kind of turns inward, right? Takes off the sunglasses and said, what does this growth really mean to you? And you want to understand based on the earlier parts of the video where you have it, where it's transiting. You want to be able to listen to that as well and apply it as a transit. So, for example, you might have Jupiter, you might have, I don't know, you might be in Aries rising and have Jupiter retrograde and I mean Jupiter in Gemini in the third house, right? Whatever. But right now Jupiter is in Cancer, right? So you want to make sure that you check that Jupiter in Cancer and just apply it, and a little bit of a lighter version as this particular transit, but then just understand also this retrograde is going to be impacting you on a more of an internal level, right? So instead of things being externally lucky or opportunities or expansion, Jupiter retrograde really does focus on inner wisdom upgrades, really thinking about things a lot slower. We re-examine our beliefs, our philosophies, and the stories that we tell ourselves. But it's not all bad because there are still blessings here, but they're just slower. Powerful, but just slower. It still comes just more quietly, a little bit more behind the scenes through revisiting something from the past, right? And since Jupiter is in Cancer, it could be anything having to do with your emotional security, anything that might, you know, be connected to home, property, real estate, anything connected to your first family. That's all fourth house Cancer stuff, right? But then obviously it depends on where your Cancer energy is, right? Understanding that. But there should be a period, it should be about a 4-month period of reflection on Jupiterian things, right? Which would be abundance. So you're reevaluating what you really value, what you want more of, what you've outgrown, and what success really means to you. What does healthy growth mean to you? A lot of you are also going to be reevaluating your belief system, whether it's your religion or your politics or, how you frame the world and looking at things. There are going to be a lot of aha moments for a lot of people out in society, depending on which house that you have this in. But it's a little bit of a destiny detour, right? It's like where you thought you were going. It's a little bit of a detour whenever Jupiter goes retrograde. Doors might not open immediately, but they often open, even though it's a little later, they often much bigger and better because Jupiter retrograde makes you choose a lot more wisely. That's the thing with Jupiter, again, going back to the simile that I said at the beginning of the video, saying that Jupiter is like that young 20 something or that late teen where they just want to go out and expand and have a good time, maybe not thinking about all of the consequences on the other side. So we really can't be angry at Jupiter when he goes retrograde because he really does want to just have us pull back, slow down, and think a little bit more for the sake of maturity, for the sake of spiritual growth and being able to truly, truly trust ourselves and allowing ourselves to learn from our past experiences in whatever area Jupiter is in right now. So when Jupiter is direct, it's like, yes, go for it kind of energy. But when Jupiter is retrograde, it's like, okay, hold on, slow down, align first, then leap, then go forward. So it's a little quieter, but it's often a lot more impactful. Okay. So now that is that is for the Jupiter retrograde transit in whatever house Cancer is in for you right now. You're going to be experiencing that. Jupiter is going to be in Cancer until the beginning of June of 2026, at which time he's going to be going into Leo for that next year. Okay. But now I want to discuss Jupiter retrograde in your birth chart, right? This is a very important placement to understand. Because again, in astrology, Jupiter is the planet where we get to expand our horizons, we get to explore our philosophies, go on a quest of our belief systems, open up our minds to new knowledge, new way of understanding things. We also want to take risks in this area, go for opportunities with the belief if that it will all work out, right? That luck is on our side, right? That things are great. However, when Jupiter is retrograde, it's about making tweaks in things like your beliefs and your boundaries, plus dreams and wishes, so that you can really be ready to enjoy those Jupiter blessings in the way that you're meant to. If we have it retrograde, it means it's something that we have to look at. It's something that we have to go within, something that we have to review. And this is where, though, having this Jupiter retrograde can feel like a drag because you don't get to fully access all of the benefits without working hard, without doing that internal work, which is not in this planet's vocabulary naturally, right? Jupiter doesn't like doing these things. Jupiter likes everything to be effortless and to be happy and cheerful and fun, you know? And honestly, it can be tricky having retrogrades in your chart. So, work through your stressors the best that you can at your own pace. It takes time to get where you want when there's a retrograde placement of any kind in your natal chart. And most of us have at least one or two. A lot of people have six or seven, right? We all have them, right? But let's talk about this natal Jupiter retrograde experience. So, one of the reasons why retrogrades in the natal chart, or even in a transit, actually, could feel so intense is because it's on the other side of the sun, right? And so, for this reason, we experience the whole energetic field of whatever planet it's in going inverse. Okay, so when these planets are behind the sun, they are mitigated by solar energy. So the power the celestial body has is emanating that would normally emanate out is toned down. So, therefore, with nothing to filter the strength of the planet, we experience it at full velocity when it's going reverse. We experience all of it without, no holds barred, right? Which can be really intense, right? So we want to understand the themes of Jupiter retrograde. So these are some themes that you may encounter if you have your Jupiter retrograde natally. Your viewpoints, first of all, can be vastly different from other people, especially your immediate family, especially father energy. Okay? There could be times when you aren't open to speaking your opinions, right? You're just not comfortable. Your optimism can feel kind of dampened down at times where, um, you could be glass half empty, when it comes to certain things. You can be hesitant when it comes to taking very bold risks. Learning, Jupiter is very connected to learning. So, learning in terms of formal education could feel kind of confusing, kind of hazy. There could even be some delays. Um, and when I say delays, like maybe you go to one school and then you leave and then you go to another school, whatever it is. And that's just important to note. And because this is a very social planet, you could feel like you're just not on the same page as other people that are in like your age group or your class or, whatever it is. You just feel like you're not in the same space as them. You know what's best for you, though, educationally, and you need to do your own thing at your own timing. Um, you know what you're doing in that way. So, I have a lot of clients who have this where they decided a little later in life to go back to school or to go back and finish a degree, some to begin in the first place. Um, Anything like that. Now, also, religious views can go through many phases from changing beliefs, from hopping from one to the other, to fanaticism, to losing faith altogether, right? Depends on, what's going on. Because if this is with you natally, we have to understand that these things are a lot of times activated by current transits that are transiting, at any given time. Also, at times you can have issues with integrity, with the law, with your scruples, in fact, okay? Taking social responsibility becomes essential as you learn how to access your Jupiter. You're not as hopeful and you are somewhat cautious as someone whose Jupiter is direct, and how you view luck and money comes across to many people around you as somewhat illogical. Your perspective on luck and money can seem illogical to other people in your life. But it could be a sense of entitlement that you experience that could get in your way from time to time, right? A tendency to discredit or deny other people's reality. I would say that that's a pretty big one, and that's something that we all just need to have some honest self-reflection on, right? If that happens to be your placement, this is a gaslighting kind of energy. You want to be careful with that. Now, you can feel more restricted than those born with Jupiter direct, and you may have issues seeing other people's points of view. You could tend to turn your nose up at traditional beliefs and religions, and you could feel like you're on this unquenchable quest for the truth, right? And whatever that means to you. The bigger picture could be a really hard thing for you to conceptualize, like over the long term, you know? And when you get more connected with your Jupiter energy, that Jupiter retrograde, you begin to walk the right path for yourself, right? This is not like, oh, for the rest of your life, this is going to be, yeah, I mean, look, this is part of your blueprint. But what's beautiful about astrology is to understand that that's your blueprint. But part of the human condition, one of our blessings is the fact that we've been given choice. So you're not at the mercy, you're not a puppet to these energies. It just means that these are things you need to be mindful and you have to be honest with yourself. Honest with yourself. We all have to be honest with ourselves. Where our retrogrades are, where our Black Moon Lilith is, we all have to be honest with ourselves, right, about these things. You may feel very comfortable taking baby steps, but eventually you learn to go after whims. Normally the reason I'm saying it like that is because normally Jupiter is like, let's go, let's expand, let's do this. But with that retrograde energy, you feel a lot more comfortable doing things one level, get comfortable there, then you go to the next level, you get comfortable there, until you get comfortable leveling up, and then eventually you will feel a lot more comfortable just kind of going after what it is that you want to go after. You can absolutely end up excelling down the line in higher education. So this, I see a lot of people going back to school later on for a master's degree, a PhD, maybe even teaching in higher ed, anything like that. You can be an excellent teacher and or life coach with Jupiter retrograde. You have an excellent chance of being a great writer, a great editor, a publisher, or some sort of online entrepreneur, having your own business online. Ultimately, you will be pushed to learn how to access your personal abundance and prosperity. You won't have much choice in that. And I can tell you that Jupiter does not love being in Cancer, right? Excuse me, Jupiter does not totally love being in Cancer, right? But he does love being in Leo. So you really want to look forward to that. Having the Jupiter retrograde in Leo can be absolutely fantastic for anything creative, because that really does expand that internal creativity and even being able to connect on a deeper level in relationships. So, look, generally speaking, even though these situations might be challenging, you master them eventually. You do. And having Jupiter retrograde doesn't mean you won't have luck. It doesn't mean you won't have opportunities. It's more so that it just takes longer for the abundance to come into your life. And of course, I do want to acknowledge that it isn't always rosy when you're born with planets that are going backwards here. I get that it could be super stressful, but the good thing is that you won't be stagnant in life just because you have planets retrograde. I just don't want you to think that, because that's just not going to happen. Okay. And another really cool thing about having this retrograde energy is an advantage to develop your skills on a deeper level, which puts you in a position of prosperity, really, like, and whatever that might mean for you. And additionally, you do tend to do better when the planet isn't direct, because this is the frequency that you were born with. Therefore, you can adapt to the retrograde seasons better than others. So now that Jupiter is in retrograde again from November 11th to March 10th, this is probably going to feel like a really supportive, comfortable time period for you, which can be a beautiful thing, having to do with home, property, real estate, anything that could help feed your emotional security. So I hope this was helpful, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.